Welcome to Fresh Off the Boat. My name is Arjun Seth, and I'm delighted to be interviewing Lakshay Thakral. Lakshay, welcome to our
Thank
podcast,
you.
and so happy to sort of connect with someone who chose to study in India, chose to pursue his passion of understanding law and law education in India. And also, congratulations for graduating from
Thank you
NUJS
very
in
much.
Kolkata. Uh,
Thanks.
so tell me a bit about your journey coming out from high school, Sriram School, Aravali in Gurgaon, and then pursuing law. What was going on in your mind back then? And when you finally made it, what was it like in the initial months there?
Sure. So I had graduated from Shriram Aravali in 2015. At the time, I think the idea of law was exciting to me. I thought that's what I wanted to do. Now that I have a better idea, I can tell you at that time I had no clue about what it's all about. I just had some perception of it. But I had decided, I think after class 10 board, so class 11 and 12, I had some basic idea in my head that law is what I want to do, or at least the idea of law that I had at the time. And that's why I felt that, pursuing law here is the best option. I prepared for the CLAT exam from about, I think, the starting of my 12th grade, and used to parallelly do that with the board exams, which whenever they came about towards the end of the year. So I think overall, it was a little intimidating at first because it's a national competitive exam with thousands of people taking it, and of course it's definitely you have to study and put in the work, but there's a large luck component that does kick in. I mean, thousands of people, one question changes the place that you're going to be at. So of course it's not there is this luck element that you have to factor in, and you are leaving it to chance to a certain extent. But yeah, so I think I managed to do decently well in the exam. And initially, as you can imagine, an Indian entrance exam, there were some hiccups. The results that were released were taken back after telling all friends and family that I got into college. Suddenly, results are off the system, and now we don't know what's happening. So there's a little hiccups, but I think overall, it worked out well for me. And early June, in fact, the first amongst my peers to run off to college was me in 2015.
How was it like the first few weeks, months? How do they make you settle in? And then what is the rigor of the classes and the routine, not just in the first year, but over 5 years?
So I think settling in initially, it was a little hard in the first few weeks, but it picked up along the way. I was fortunate to have a few friends of mine who I had studied CLAT with, who were going with me, not from school, but from people in Delhi. So I just had a small support system. So initially, I think, and given that my brother studied NYU, I could just draw some contrast. It's a little very different from probably a college in the US for many reasons. One reason I must point out is the size. It's just this is a very small university with we were a total of 600 people, 120 people in the batch. So everyone kind of knew everyone, and everyone stayed together. Although there was possible to stay off campus, but I think 90% people stay on campus. It's one campus building, and for the hostels, and the libraries are open till 2 a.m. So it's sort of like a community within a community, and that whole system. So you kind of grow in with everyone there, and that's how the settling in started. It took a few weeks, but I think slowly I was getting settled in. As far as the classes were concerned, I think initially it was quite intimidating. We started with these legal cases from 1800s, or cases from the courts in the UK, and it was complete gibberish to us initially. But over time, you slowly picked up, and that's what the point being, that there was so few people there that you kind of knew everyone in the class. You knew exactly what's happening. It wasn't like a NYU where everyone goes their separate ways after class. Everyone would be in the same library trying to navigate their way through that case. So I think that support system was quite comforting at some level.
Fantastic. So, what is a law education in India, and what different tracks do people choose as they progress in their upperclassmen years?
So it's a 5-year degree, which is actually like it's a BA LLB, wherein you don't have a separate BA, but it's a part of the curriculum, because historically in India you had to do 3 years of undergraduate and then 3 years of law. So here, when you start off your law degree, you have BA components. Of course, different universities do offer a BSc LLB or a BBA LLB, etc. So you could have that track, but BA LLB is usually the most common. So initially, in the first 2 years, you have the BA component, which is a little on the heavier side, with sociology, political science, legal history, economics, etc. I would say very basic introduction courses, on not so much introduction, but just one single overview of the subject, rather than actually doing any in-depth study. And apart from that, later when you go towards your third, fourth, and fifth year, you have more legal intensive classes with uh, so as the Bar Council requires in India, you need to do around 50 mandatory 50 courses, out of which a few are mandatory. So courses such as criminal law, constitutional law, contract law, etc., are something that everyone is required to do. And then over and above that, you may have certain elective courses. Like I've taken some interesting classes like law of privacy, then international finance, law and secularism, etc. So as for the different tracks, I think initially you'll see in the first 2-3 years that everyone is doing pretty much the same thing, but eventually you'll start seeing people that go into their separate ways and trying to follow what they're more interested in. It's a much longer degree than others, so definitely you have more time to figure out what you want to do. I think with so a lot of people have a lot of my class will be doing some form of commercial law, which is working at a law firm doing different practices, from corporate M&A to litigation to intellectual property, etc. There's a lot of branches within that. And then there's a lot of people also going and doing law with lawyers in the courts. So they could go and practice in the Bombay High Court, in Delhi High Court, Supreme Court, etc. Obviously, as juniors under senior lawyers, at this stage, you don't actually go and argue before the court, but you start your journey. And then, of course, there's a lot of people who want to pursue an LLM, go and study in different universities. I think there's a few people from my batch going to Cambridge and Singapore and a couple of other places, and pursue a more theoretical study and then see where that takes them. Policy is another big area where people go and join. So organizations such as Vidhi, Center for Policy, etc., where they work on helping draft policies. And apart from that, there's also, I think I've noticed that there's a 20 to 30% people who choose not to pursue law after 5 years. And of course, this number continues to rise over the years as people, after starting to work, try to change their path. But even at the end of the 5 years, there's 20 to 30% people will try and pick an alternative path.
Fascinating. Yeah, you summarize it extremely well, I think. And also the path that you chose, which is now corporate finance and your job in Mumbai, that's coming up. So how do you sort of go into explaining the nitty-gritty of a corporate law firm, and how do incoming first year sort of, not interns, but fresh employees sort of work their way in a corporate law firm environment?
Well, so I think my experience comes from a few internships that I've done, yet to join, so can't really give you any in-depth analysis on this. But I have interned at a few of the law firms in Delhi, and probably done a cumulative of 5 or 6 months across different internships. So I think the way it works is that you start getting into the corporate law firms around your third year, which is when you can start interning with them. It's too early before that to actually start going to them. And then once you start interning with them, a lot of them follow the model where they first want you to intern with them, and then through those internships they can ask you to either come back or offer you recruitment opportunities. And then they also do come to the campus and conduct interviews and hire. But I think more with the experience, so these firms are basically advising. It's sort of like an advisory. how an EY or McKinsey does, but in the legal capacity. Of course, they do litigation, they do dispute resolution as well, but the corporate side of it is more transaction and advisory, where they help their clients navigate their legal problems and their legal concerns through a transaction or their day-to-day business. And you get to work on different deals that are happening in the market. So a lot of of course it's all confidential, but a lot of deals that you hear in the news, X company purchasing Y company, you actually get to work on those deals, work on the due diligence for those deals. So that's kind of exciting experience.
Mm-hmm. So going back to studying law in the UK or elsewhere at the undergrad level and compare it with doing it in India. So did it ever cross your mind as to comparing the two courses and seeing the benefits of both, or figuring out what would work for you?
So first, just as a background, law in India is a 5-year program. Law in the UK is 3-year undergrad, which is just the LLB. And in the US, it's first completing an undergraduate, usually the 4 years there, and then going in for a JD for 3 years. So practically, obviously, straight out of school, the only law option that I had was India or UK, because the US is a postgraduate degree. I think I was fairly clear that I want to practice law in India. Not necessarily practice, but study law in India. I did not even apply to the UK for law. And I think also it's not that it's impossible to study in a different jurisdiction and come and practice, but there are certain barriers and challenges that do arise. So if an Indian student were to go and study in the UK, you cannot just use that degree and come and start practicing here. I'm not entirely certain of the exact procedure, but there's certain requirements, tests, and some training period which lasts approximately 2 years that kind of that you have to do to be at par in the sense with Indian students with regards to practicing, because it would not be fair also on Indian students if you could finish a degree in the UK in 3 years and practice, whereas it take you 5 years over here. So those certain barriers do exist, unlike other professions where you can study anywhere and pretty much, the education helps you anywhere. Here, the education obviously does, but given that it's a regulated profession, you do need to have that license to actually practice in the.
Got it. So also about law education, which has that focus on arguments, and the moot court becomes an important part of that in India. And it could be very different when you do a JD, say, in the US. Why do you think the Indian system of law requires students at law schools to be ready for something like this?
So I think law as a general profession is one that you keep picking up over the years. It's not one where you can really the years of experience. Of course, it matters in any profession, but here it matters, I feel, all the more. Like, for instance, an American lawyer would have never practiced until the age of maybe 26 or 27 after they finish the JD. Of course, there are exceptional cases, but that's the general trend. Whereas in India, at 22, 23, and in the UK, even 21, you could be a lawyer. So I think definitely the way the systems are, they're inherently different. Here they're giving you access to it early, but there's a lot of things you need to pick up on the way before you can actually be at par with someone practicing, at a senior level. But I think in India, the 5-year program is kind of, it helps you get some time to really understand what's happening. It's not that I did 5 years of study and that's what's really given me a little bit of an idea what's happening. But I guess just over time, repeatedly doing the same things, and it has been able to develop that understanding. So I think that's been a good thing. But there are arguments that, this 5-year degree could actually be a 4-year degree as well. So that is a debate out there. But I think overall, it prepares you quite well, given the time that you have.
You also mentioned that there are different paths, like a BBA LLB and a BSc LLB, BSc LLB. So how does that work? Do you know of universities in India that offer that?
Yes. So mostly it's the BA LLB. However, there are, I think at Jindal, they have the BBA and the BSc, if I'm not sure. And then I think Gandhinagar has the BBA as well. Usually, so the only difference being that in the first 2 years, the few subjects that you do for that component will be a bit different. I was actually quite interested to pursue a BBA LLB if I got the chance, but it was not available for us, and it's not really that common. But yeah, so that the only difference being that the first 2 years, you would not have sociology, political science, legal history. You might have accounting, commercial studies in the BBA LLB, and probably intro to physics and chemistry and BSc. I guess that would be the difference, but I don't think your law part of it is impacted much.
Law schools are also very famous for their debate competitions or publications students work on, research. It's very active debate. And if you look at what's going on around the world, political, economic turmoil, so the question to you is, how did you participate in extracurriculars which were related to these fields? What was your experience like at NUJS?
So again, here there's a lot of different avenues, and I think mostly in your first 1 or 2 years, you kind of pick what you like. So yes, I mean, the conventional idea is that law students debate and moot and participate in all these things. Of course, a lot of them do, but there are a lot of other avenues as well. A lot of people aren't the most excited by speaking, public speaking, etc. So there are a lot of different options. So actually, just to touch upon some of the options, of course, there's moot courts, which is basically you're given a fictitious case and you have to argue both sides before a judge, and it's in a competition format. Now, this moot court itself can be in different areas of law, from competition law, human rights, freedom of speech, a lot of different avenues. Then another kind of variant of that's really picking up, which I've also been particularly interested in, has been alternative dispute resolution, which is mediation, commercial negotiation, and arbitration. These are ways that you can actually go out of court and use court-related means of actually resolving your disputes. So in a typical mediation competition, you could possibly be given a case of even a family dispute to a complex business joint venture disagreement that you have to resolve. So for myself, like, I went to the International Chamber of Commerce in Paris and attended their international mediation competition. It's actually a negotiation competition, commercial negotiation. So that was a very good experience for me. So this is another avenue that's really picking up. Aside from this, of course, conventional parliamentary debating is very popular. I did try it out my first 2 years, but I don't think I continued after. But a lot of students are interested in this. Outside of that, a lot of students take up publishing either in journals or in different blogs, writing on. So even the culture of writing on small 500-600 word pieces on latest developments is also very common, as opposed to a research paper which can actually take months to come out with full detail critiquing a law or any other such avenue. Apart from that,
yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. So I think apart from that, a lot of other conventional college activities are there as well. Like our cultural society was very strong. They used to have Sunday sessions where people used to sit and jam and create music, and there are regular play productions that are put up in Hindi and English. So I think a lot of those conventional college student activities are also happening on campus. It's not just that law students are confined to their.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing all these details. I feel like a law school student already. Definitely fantastic insights that you've shared. So thanks, Lakshay. It was great having you on this episode of Fresh Off the Board, and looking forward to actually inviting you to a panel. We've had students who are very seriously considering law and love to put that together and have a discussion. So thanks so much.
Happy to join. Thank you.